You walk through the front door, and the day is still on you. The meetings, the noise, the 100 small frictions that accumulated across 8 hours until you are running on whatever reserve sits just below exhaustion. You set your bag down by the door. Your phone is already in your hand. You're thinking about dinner, about the notification you haven't answered, about how much you don't want to think about anything at all. And then there's your dog, tail moving in that full-body way, eyes locked on you, weight shifting forward like they've been rehearsing this moment. You look up briefly, you say something, "Hey buddy," or something like it, without stopping, without kneeling down, without really arriving, and your dog follows you 2, maybe 3 steps into the hallway before slowing, before stopping, before the evening simply becomes the evening. And that moment dissolves into the routine like it was nothing. You've done this. You know exactly what this looks like. The question worth sitting with isn't whether it happened, it's what it actually was. There's a belief that most dog owners carry without ever quite examining it. It functions as a quiet reassurance, the kind of thing you tell yourself not because you've thought it through, but because it makes the small daily failures feel manageable. The belief is this: dogs live in the present moment. Whatever your dog experienced while you were gone, the silence, the stillness, the waiting, resets the instant you walk through the door. The greeting is understood as the whole transaction. A burst of excitement, a brief acknowledgement, and then both of you move on. The belief is comforting precisely because it asks nothing more of you. It's generous to your dog and forgiving to yourself. It is also, according to a growing body of behavioral research, significantly incomplete, because what studies observing dogs during owner absence and in the minutes immediately following reunion have found disrupts this picture in a way that's hard to set aside. The homecoming interaction doesn't function as one event among many in a dog's day. It functions as the emotional resolution to everything that came before it. Dogs don't discharge their waiting at the moment the door opens. They carry the accumulated anticipation of the entire separation directly into that greeting. And what happens in those first minutes of reunion, the quality of it, the presence within it, actively shapes their physiological and emotional state for hours afterward. A distracted return doesn't simply fail to satisfy the waiting. It leaves something unresolved in the dog's nervous system, still running, still looking for somewhere to land. Researchers working in canine attachment science have a name for what unfolds at these moments: the reunion response. It's a well-documented behavioral and neurological pattern that activates specifically when an attachment-bonded animal is rejoined by its attachment figure. In dogs, the response involves a cascade of neurochemical activity that builds steadily across the separation period and reaches its peak at the moment of return. A study published by researchers at the University of Veterinary Medicine in Vienna found that dogs who received low responsiveness reunions, brief, distracted, or emotionally flat greetings, showed measurably delayed physiological settling compared to dogs whose reunions involved genuine, sustained engagement. The greeting isn't a social formality. For your dog, it is the emotional resolution to the entire arc of the day. Its quality, not just its occurrence, carries disproportionate weight. And here's what that means for what your dog was actually doing while you were gone, not simply waiting in some passive time-passing sense. Research on canine behavior during owner absence consistently finds that dogs organize their activity around the anticipated moment of reunion, their resting cycles, their alertness windows, their proximity to the entrance. The return isn't one event they're waiting for. It's the event their day was structured around. When you walk in and move past them, you are not just skipping a greeting. You are arriving at the center of their day, the moment their entire internal architecture was oriented toward, and walking straight through it without stopping. What the dog's body was doing in preparation for that moment has a measurable biology behind it. Research measuring neurochemical activity in dogs during owner absence has found elevated dopamine release in the hours preceding the expected return, the same anticipatory reward system that drives goal-directed motivation in humans. Your dog's brain was, in a demonstrable biological sense, building toward your arrival. A study from researchers at Emory University examining canine neural responses found that the owner's scent and anticipated presence activated reward circuitry in dogs more reliably than almost any other stimulus tested. When the reunion delivers significantly less engagement than the anticipatory state was primed for, cortisol, the primary stress hormone, remains elevated longer than in dogs who received full responsive greetings. The mismatch between what the body prepared for and what it received doesn't register as disappointment in any human sense. It registers as unresolved physiological arousal that the body must gradually, slowly work through on its own. None of this is incidental, it's evolutionary. For tens of thousands of years, the return of a human after an absence carried critical survival information for dogs living within human groups. Safety had been confirmed, the group was intact, resources were coming. Dogs who tracked and responded intensely to these return moments were better integrated, better positioned, better cared for. The homecoming was never a neutral event in the ancestral environment. It was a signal that reoriented the entire group's state. The intensity your dog brings to the door every evening is that ancient intelligence, still fully intact, expressed in a modern hallway. It hasn't been bred out. It hasn't faded. It is exactly as significant as it ever was. What happens over time when that significance goes consistently unmet is something behavioral researchers describe carefully because it can be easily misread. Dogs who experience chronically low engagement reunions don't remain at the same level of anticipatory intensity. They adapt. Studies into long-term reunion patterns have found that these dogs begin to show what behaviorists call dampened greeting behavior. Reduced intensity at the door, less sustained eye contact, shorter proximity seeking after the initial approach. To an owner, this can look like the dog becoming more relaxed, more independent, less demanding. In reality, it more closely reflects a quiet emotional recalibration. The dog has gradually revised their expectations downward to match a repeated pattern of returns that never quite met the anticipation those returns were built around. The hope doesn't disappear, it just learns to ask for less. There's a detail in the research that sits uncomfortably once you see it. Studies examining the relationship between owner stress levels and reunion quality have found that the dogs most consistently ignored at homecoming are those whose owners are most emotionally depleted, the ones coming home from the hardest days. Which means the dogs most in need of a resolving reunion are statistically the ones least likely to receive one. Your exhaustion is real. The demand of the day is real. But it arrives at the door of a dog whose day was also difficult in its own way, who held their orientation toward you for hours, whose neurochemistry was building toward your return, who was still hoping, with the particular faithfulness that only dogs seem to carry, right up until you walked in. And here is what the research quietly insists, which turns out to be the most compassionate piece of information in all of this. Duration is almost irrelevant. Studies on reunion quality consistently find that a 2-minute greeting that is fully present, real eye contact, real physical contact, genuine acknowledgement, produces significantly stronger physiological settling in dogs than 10 or 15 minutes of distracted proximity. This is not one more obligation at the end of an already demanding day. It is the shortest, most efficient act of relational repair available to you. Your dog doesn't need an hour. They need 2 minutes of you actually arriving, not just your body crossing the threshold, but you, present, completing the moment that their whole day was built toward. That dog who followed you 2 steps and then stopped. They weren't being dramatic. They weren't fine. They had spent the day in a particular kind of patient faithfulness, organizing their hours around a moment that, when it finally came, passed them by. They didn't protest. They didn't punish you. They absorbed it the way dogs absorb everything, quietly, completely, without accusation. But the door still matters. The 2 minutes still matter. The moment of real arrival, of actually stopping, of making contact, of letting them know the waiting is over, that matters in a way that runs deeper than habit or sentiment. It runs through 10,000 years of a bond that was built, in part, on the promise of return. Your dog built their whole day around the moment you came home. They were still hoping, with everything they had, right up until you walked past. So here's what I want to ask you. Think about what your homecoming actually looks like, not what you intend it to be, what it actually is, tonight, most nights. And if you've ever come home differently, more present, more intentional, fully arrived, did you notice something shift in your dog? Leave that in the comments. I read them. And next time, we're going to take this one step further, because if your dog feels the full weight of your return after a single day apart, what happens inside them when you're gone for much longer? What does that absence actually do? And what does the reunion after it mean? That's the question we're going to sit with next.